everyone, and welcome to the second installment of our Sea Grant Spotlight Liaison webinar series. Today we'll be hearing from Chiara Zuccarino-Crowe, who sits with Michigan Sea Grant and serves as a Sea Grant liaison to NOAA in the Great Lakes region to enhance partnerships among NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab and the 8 Great Lakes Sea Grant programs. Chiara was also a 2014 Canals Fellow, and prior to joining the Michigan Sea Grant, served as NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries and National Marine Sanctuary Foundation for several years on issues related to sustainable coastal tourism and outdoor recreation in marine protected areas. And so thank you, Chiara.
Thanks so much, Alice. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be speaking to those of you that have called in on the webinar, and I also have a couple people here in person as well at NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, so this is fun. As Alice said, I work for a part of Michigan Sea Grant that's based within Michigan State University's Extension Program, and my role as a Sea Grant liaison is to act as a coordinator among the Great Lakes Sea Grant programs and NOAA in the region. I just came into this position a little bit over a year ago, and thus far I've been focusing my efforts on strengthening connections between the various partners that I serve. So, let me advance this. To give an overview of what I'm going to be covering today, my main goal is to just answer the question, what does a regional Sea Grant liaison actually do? What does this mean? If this is your first foray into Sea Grant, I'll start with a brief introduction as to what that program looks like and how it operates, and as well as present you with an organizational framework of networks for how this all links into NOAA and the Great Lakes and the various cross-cutting focus areas and communities of practice that exist across the region's Sea Grant network. And I'll also explain some examples of how these pair with NOAA programs in the region, as well as examples of where this has been taking me over the past year and where I think I'll be going moving forward. So just for a bit of context and background, in case you're not familiar, Sea Grant is a program within the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. It's part of NOAA Research's line office, or the Oceanic and Atmospheric Research Office. And there's a National Sea Grant Office that administers the National Sea Grant College program. And this essentially provides funding and oversees national funding competitions and priorities across a network of 34 programs that are located across every coastal Great Lakes state, Puerto Rico, and Guam. So this liaison position concept, in general, and there are several of us which you're hearing from throughout this series of webinars, is meant to enhance the application of NOAA research within the Sea Grant network and its end user communities, as well as to enhance the relevancy of NOAA research to address societal needs. So basically strengthening this connection between big NOAA and the programs and research that NOAA does and these individual programs across the country and their communities. In my case, this liaison position has a regional focus. So instead of driving collaboration on specific topics or areas of inquiry, like you might have heard of last week with the focus more on ocean acidification in the Northwest, I focus more on partnership development across a variety of priority areas within the Great Lakes region that are of importance to NOAA in the region, as well as all the state Sea Grant programs in this region. So in the Great Lakes, we actually have 8 Sea Grant programs that coordinate across the region. We have Minnesota, Michigan, New York, Lake Champlain, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana, and Wisconsin Sea Grant. And we also have the added benefit not only of having our individual programs, but also working together and being linked into our state universities and the network of resources that opens up to us. So going back to this conceptual framework idea, we've got big NOAA National Sea Grant Office that supports the individual National Sea Grant College programs in the Great Lakes. Like I said, this is 8, and they also get funding from external grant competitions as well and other partners. And the Sea Grant programs each have strategic plans that align with the 4 national focus areas set by the National Sea Grant Office. So all of the work that Sea Grant does falls within these general areas. And then in executing these strategic plans within these areas, Sea Grant also kind of operates as a boundary organization. If you think of how it connects in with networks, it often operates across and connects distinct nodes from different networks, whether that be communities or institutions of research. And this is because each Sea Grant program, in serving their communities, also connects with the networks aligned with the various areas of expertise and resources that Sea Grant is bringing to communities or working with. And these connections are often aligned with Sea Grant's core components, which are research, extension, and education. So from a research perspective, Sea Grant employs or supports scientists to address emerging and pressing needs related to those strategic areas I talked about before. Extension is more about providing trusted experts who can be the honest brokers of information about technical and science-based information that residents might need to address local needs, as well as transferring research priorities back to universities. And education is both formal and informal, but more related to just providing instruction and tools to teachers, students, or professionals in the public related to topics within those focal areas. So we're getting a more complex network as we go along. And then we add NOAA into the mix as well. So this includes in the Great Lakes a network of NOAA offices and programs. As you can see in the region, this is a fairly large footprint. This is a map of various NOAA offices, both representing line and program offices across the region. And you can see it's quite a large footprint. And the hub of these is NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, which is where I'm based and which is one of the primary partners of this liaison position. GLERL, as I'll be calling it probably most of the rest of this presentation, has the following focal research and programmatic priorities. So some of that's related to wind, wave, and current forecasting. That's useful in things like oil spill predictions of where currents might take something. Ice cover and water levels research, often used by, for example, the Coast Guard in knowing what ice is going to be like so they can plan ice-breaking needs. Invasive species and food web research and modeling, and how that affects the ecology of the Great Lakes. They do a lot of work on harmful algal blooms monitoring and research, as well as maintaining a regional fleet of vessels. GLERL also serves as a hub for a diverse suite of partners in the region, both virtually and physically. So being situated here provides a great opportunity to connect into this even larger network of partners. So this brings us back to this diverse network of, in a sense, what we're trying to do is maximize value and effectiveness across this by supporting a sort of team of teams concept for the region. So in essence, in the case of this liaison position, I'm serving this network of networks with my primary focus being Great Lakes Sea Grant Network, NOAA and the National Sea Grant Office, as well as Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, and a regional collaboration team that focuses across the Great Lakes. The objectives I have for this position are both to facilitate integration and partnerships about the respective Great Lakes related programs in the region, as well as developing collaborative programs that draw on these various partners' work and that are directed towards stakeholder audiences. So this is basically just regional partnerships, program planning and evaluation, and project development, or building capacity for emerging key areas as they come up. In order to do this, because it's kind of a large ask, I actually have a position advisory committee, and they offer guidance. We meet about 3 times a year, and it's made up of representatives of NOAA, Sea Grant, and Michigan State University. So So for example, NOAA GLERL's director, Deborah Lee, the regional coordinator for NOAA's Great Lakes Regional Collaboration Team, Jennifer Day, and the program leader for Michigan Sea Grant Extension, Heather Triesenberg, are kind of chair this committee up. And it also includes representation of the sitting chairs of the Great Lakes Sea Grant directors, the Sea Grant Extension leads, and the Sea Grant communication leads, as well as representatives from MSU Extension. And they advise not only on larger scale things, but kind of just help me confirm my work plan each year and make sure that it's aligning with what the position was set out to do. So in some cases, this can look like pretty straightforward things, like communications tools. So I pull together an updates newsletter every 6 weeks or so that's primarily meant for an internal audience of Sea Grant staff and NOAA regional collaboration team members, GLERL PIs that want to get it, and really whoever else asks. And it's a collection of news highlights, events, resources, and it's just a way for this group of people that I'm serving to quickly see what each other's up to, get ideas about things that are coming up, funding opportunities, etc. I use it to highlight some sort of tool each month that I hope just generates interest in some of the work that GLERL or Sea Grant's doing. This is just one example on the screen. I'm constantly trying to see what type of iteration will work best in the future, what type of communication tool will be ideal for just enhancing collaboration between people. Some folks are inundated with newsletters, so you never know how useful it is, but thus far, the open and read rate from the analytics I'm getting are generally above the industry average. So about 30% of people are actually reading it, and as in clicking through it and actually going to links within it. So, and about 50% of people are actually opening it. And in addition to that, I maintain the listservs that this goes out to. I keep track of kind of expert lists within the Sea Grant network so that when questions come up, I know who to direct them to. Another in-person method of communication and collaboration is the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network meeting. They happen every other year, and I helped plan the one that we just had this past September in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. And this was a really great opportunity to bring together Sea Grant staff from across all 8 programs, NOAA partners, some of our core partners as well, NOAA staff, and give people a chance to talk to each other and build those relationships that I think really further success and furthering research and how do we maximize effectiveness and learn from each other. And we also made an effort to make it as low waste of a meeting as possible. So at the end, we have a photo here of our green confetti toss. We made confetti out of leaves and did a photo with them, which was surprisingly fun. And we delivered information in various innovative ways. We tried out different formats beyond just a typical PowerPoint session and generally got really good feedback on our survey results. Another deliverable that I've been working on is populating a network website. So basically, it's a portal that Sea Grant and NOAA staff can use to easily access links to respective Sea Grant program information or projects. And thus far, the audience for that has been mostly internal as well. But if there becomes a need, we can always market it more broadly. But right now, it's really just for folks that want a quick way within our network of finding information on what each other is doing. And this has been useful when topics come up that are of regional interest, or when there's a multi-state project or program that has an individual website but wants to be linked into the broader network. So, for example, I've built a resource page on Great Lakes water levels, and they've been high lately, and that's been something that Sea Grant staff and communities have been having to respond to quite a bit. And there's a lot of data and research provided by other groups like the Army Corps of Engineers and NOAA that we often go to use as a resource for information to share with communities. So compiling all of that in one place, for example. So it serves as a useful centralized location to highlight some of these overarching topics. In addition, I focus a lot on just trying to understand the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network itself. At least that's what I've been doing a lot the last year. So I've been looking at what are some of the priority areas for collaboration that the program leads have set for themselves over the last years. What types of communities of practice or networks have arisen around these? Some of these are formal groups, some of them are more ad hoc, and I try and keep track of who's involved in those, what they are, and keep them kind of at close reach so I can share that information with other partners like at NOAA who might want to link into that. And that's further supported through these various networks that are all part of the Sea Grant program. So to go through some of these, to give you some examples, aquatic invasive species is one of the major areas that we work in and collaborate with NOAA in. NOAA hosts the Great Lakes Aquatic Non-Indigenous Species Information System, for example. Hydrocarbon transport is another topic that Sea Grant's been very active in. It's a partnership with the Great Lakes Commission and the International Joint Commission, and so far has provided a website with resources, workshops, webinars, and we've had NOAA speakers on that series of webinars as well, and talked about some of the fluid dynamics that affect oil spills, like I mentioned earlier, which draws on GLERL research and GLERL Partners research. We focus on education, which is primarily facilitated formally through the Center for Great Lakes Literacy, which includes more than just Sea Grant staff, but provides things like shipboard science workshops, even land-based programs, has curriculum resources. There's also Clean Marinas program and Clean Marina Network that includes more than just Sea Grant staff, but is part of one of those multi-state projects that we connect in with. There's a group working on marine debris and microplastics, emerging contaminants, green infrastructure and stormwater management, promoting a weather-ready nation and promoting water safety, and also fisheries and aquaculture. If you're familiar with NOAA, you might recognize that some of these align very closely with NOAA priorities as well, and also overlap with things that GLERL does. So for example, just to show one, Coast Watch is a nationwide NOAA program that has a node within the Great Lakes, and it both obtains, produces, and delivers environmental data and products for a near real-time observation of the Great Lakes that supports environmental science, decision-making, research, etc. It uses both a combination of satellite observations and in-situ Great Lakes data. We've got also different end users using that data that's output. So one of those end users, for example, happens to be Michigan Sea Grant. And for several decades now, Michigan Sea Grant has been taking output from Coast Watch and using it to make surface water temperature contours, that's used, originally it was used by fishermen that wanted to pick when they're going out of their local port or marina what the temperatures are going to look like. And when it started, they would just print them out as a temperature contour and bring it with them on their boat. And now we've slowly moved towards a web-based platform. And moving forward, that's an area where we're looking to see how we improve products like that moving forward that integrate NOAA data. Some other examples of collaborative work are the Cooperative Science and Monitoring Initiative, which since 2002 has actually been operating across multiple agencies and environmental organizations, both from the US and Canada. And each year they assess the conditions in one of the 5 Great Lakes and focus their collective monitoring efforts on that lake one at a time. NOAA is a partner of that. And from a Sea Grant perspective, a different Sea Grant program in the Great Lakes helps do the outreach associated with that and translate the monitoring results from that year's lake and serve that up to the public. With regard to harmful algal blooms, this is also both a community of practice within the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network. It's mostly made up of extension outreach agents whose communities are facing harmful algal blooms, which actually happens all over the Great Lakes. We're probably most familiar with Lake Erie or Saginaw Bay, but it happens in all Great Lakes. And there's also a team of PIs within NOAA that also focus on this. And they work on these issues through an actual harmful algal blooms and hypoxia program at GLERL. That's also a collaborative effort between the scientists at GLERL and scientists at the Cooperative Institute for Great Lakes Research. If you guys are curious about how a Cooperative Institute works, that's a story for another day, but well worth it. And in this case of HABs and hypoxia, it uses an integrated approach to both understand environmental drivers and predict events. And one example of how this has resulted in an interesting collaboration is recently SIGLR, the Cooperative Institute for Great Lakes Research, has been helping NOAA to evaluate whether additional decision support tools and forecasts would be worth developing for areas besides Lake Erie, like Saginaw Bay. And their outreach specialist had come to me and asked if anyone from Sea Grant was working in the Saginaw Bay area, and I was able to connect our local extension agent in the Saginaw Bay area and her partners at MSU Extension with SIGLR and NOAA, so we could host a collaborative workshop to get feedback and kind of serve as a focus group about what local community members were worried about when it came to HABs. Were they interested in maybe having a forecast tool or not? And that's been really useful for informing SIGLR's progress moving forward. And it also made Sea Grant feel good to be part of it and part of a larger community effort. So other areas that I focus on are further structured, not just through GLERL, but through something called NOAA's Great Lakes Regional Collaboration Team. This is a way that NOAA works across the region to create cohesiveness against that larger footprint of that map I showed you earlier, of all those different offices and programs. And there's about, I think, 18 representatives that represent these different offices that meet monthly to coordinate on issues of importance to the team. These are the areas of emphasis that they currently focus on. I'm not officially part of the team, but I work with the team and join their calls so I can better help integrate Sea Grant into what NOAA is doing across the region. I mostly focus on what's going on with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and how NOAA facilitates their portion of that program. There's also a whole area of emphasis related specifically just to partnership with Sea Grant. And there's also an area that's just been developing on the blue economy. So that is part of some of these larger developing areas that I'm going to be focusing on and have been in the most recent past, both looking at socioeconomics as well as coastal tourism and how that feeds into some of these social issues. So more specifically with the Great Lakes Blue Economy, this is a national NOAA policy initiative as well. And when I say blue economy, I basically mean what is the economic activity and impacts of Great Lakes, or in a national sense, ocean-based industries, ecosystem services, et cetera. NOAA specifically is focused on seafood production, tourism and recreation, ocean exploration, marine transportation, and coastal resilience. And in the Great Lakes, there's also been a kind of grassroots, regional, multi-stakeholder effort to evaluate and grow the Great Lakes blue economy. So kind of taking this concept of a rust belt and turning it into a blue belt and really maximizing awareness of, appreciation of, and understanding of all the economic activity that the Great Lakes drive for the region. So part of the regional collaboration team work I've been doing is leading up a sub-team within that's trying to inventory how NOAA and also Sea Grant projects support blue economy goals in the region and facilitate collaboration amongst partners of NOAA and Sea Grant that are working in this area. And in the coming year, I'm also going to be focusing more on taking this team of teams and looking more at real specific research opportunities. I have an opportunity to sit down on some of GLERL's research planning meetings, and it gives me an opportunity to look at what PIs are thinking of working on, what they are working on, and the hope is moving forward that we can start looking for commonalities or areas of interest that overlap with what some of the Sea Grant programs are doing and seeing what we can do to maximize effectiveness in addressing different Great Lakes research questions. So, in summary, this is all about finding commonalities and creating opportunities from it. This is obviously a wealth of networks to choose from, and it provides a lot of links to resources. It can be a bit overwhelming at times, but it's also a really great opportunity to get connected. And I would encourage anyone listening on the phone or in person to feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about anything I've said today or if something piqued your interest, and I'd be happy to help you connect. And that's it. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Chiara, for that presentation.
You're welcome.
And so we did actually have a request from someone for a reminder on how to subscribe to the Great Lakes Sea Grant newsletter that you mentioned.
They can email me.
Okay, wonderful.
So my email address is up on the screen right now.
Okay, great. And then second question we had was just a request if you could actually go back one slide on your presentation.
Right now?
Yes. I think someone wanted to see what was on the last slide. And then they'd also just asked, what are some tips? Yes, I think that's it. What are some tips to get started connecting, especially nonprofit groups?
So tips to connect in nonprofit groups. I think the best way right off the bat is starting local and with the networks you already know. So if you have a local Sea Grant program, that's a really good way to connect in on a local scale. If you're looking at a regional scale, I'm always happy to help. You can ask me specifically what your area of interest is and what you want to work on, and I can do my best to connect you with the partners I work with. I'm always making introductions, and I'm happy to continue doing so. So if you're looking at more of a regional scale, I'm happy to connect you with colleagues at NOAA or at SGLER or within Sea Grant that can address your needs.
Wonderful. Okay. And not seeing any more online questions for a moment, but did anyone else have a question they'd like to submit? All right. And Hollis, did you have any final thoughts?
I do not. Thank you for your talk, though, Chiara. It was very nice.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen in. And if you have any follow-up questions, hopefully you all know how to reach me.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.